You bring all these people up, but it's insane. I mean, Jesus is completely unparalleled, completely different than all these rest.
You are a Christian. You've always been a Christian. Of course you think that Jesus is the greatest thing ever. And so I understand
almost said that you think Jesus is the most compassionate, the most influential, amazing person. You've said
I don't think
he's
he's
close
most
to that.
compassionate. No, I don't. But so you're in the Christian tradition and you want to show that you're right. And, so, okay.
I want to just demonstrate that Jesus is Lord
doing this
because
as a
he
historian.
died for our sins, and I want people to know that.
Exactly. You're a theologian, and that's fine. I have no qualms with you as a theologian. What I have qualms with is you claiming that you're doing this on disinterested historical ground.
It's a historical religion. If it didn't happen in history, it didn't happen.
But if you're going to be a historian, you have to treat every religion equally,
and
not giving superiority to your particular faith.
But if you're going to be a historian...
You asked me why I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is because it violates the laws of physics.
And I don't think God... He can feed things into his system, for sure.
I don't think God can break the law of physics any more than he can break the law of mathematics.
Feeding things into his system to bring a dead person to life is not the same thing as making 2 + 2 5. That's completely different things.
They are both laws that have never been broken in history.
Except in the case of Jesus, right?
But is the historical issue here then that you think that this claim that the Messiah had been raised was kind of a post facto kind of sort of rationalization of these experiences they had?
They thought he was the Messiah before he died, in my judgment.
Right, so they did think he was the Messiah.
They weren't expecting him to die.
Right.
He died. One of them, 2 of them, 3 of them said, "I've seen the Lord." And then they had to figure out, well, how does that work? And it must mean, if he's alive again, it must mean that God's raised him from the dead.
But there were These
are apocalyptic Jews. Apocalyptic Jews, the only way they can imagine life after death is an embodied existence. They don't believe the soul lives on after death. These are Jews. Jews believe that the body and soul are one thing, and that afterlife, if there is an afterlife, it's body and soul. That if they see Jesus alive afterwards, it must mean that his soul has come back into his body. How does that happen? It can only happen when God does it.
Okay.
God has raised him from the dead. Once they say they raised him from the dead and they already knew he was the Messiah, that's when they start saying the Messiah was raised.
Quick response and we'll go to a break and then we'll...
I was just going to say, but there's other categories that they could have, as Jews, thought of. The Maccabees died horrible deaths, and they believed they lived on, exalted in the heaven. And you have many other examples of this kind of disembodied continuing to live on, but they will rise again at the final resurrection. But what the early Christians said is that Jesus had risen again now. The resurrection had already begun. Bart agrees with that. But where did that idea come from? That's the unexpectedness.
Yeah, it came from
completely unexpected. Right. But you're saying they put it together. You're saying they're the geniuses who put this innovative, unparalleled idea that has changed the world. That all goes back to the brain of Mary Magdalene?
I'm changing the world has nothing to do with it. The issue is, what does an apocalyptic Jew...
It did change the world, though, right?
What does an apocalyptic Jew think if they see somebody who had died, who's alive now? Now, when you see your grandmother in your bedroom 2 weeks after she died, typically today, this happens a lot, 1 out of 8 people in our country have a vision of a deceased loved one and are convinced they're alive again or that they're alive. In our context, we believe that the body and the soul are separable, and the soul lives on afterwards. So when you see your grandmother in your bedroom, as 1 out of 8 people, not necessarily your grandmother, but some beloved one, typically what you think is their soul's gone to heaven and they've come down to visit me, because that's our mentality of an afterlife.
But
apocalypticists don't have that. They don't have that view. Their view is that if somebody's alive after they died, it has to be a resurrection because the soul doesn't exist outside the body. So when they see Jesus, he's got to have a soul back in the body, which means God has raised him from the dead. That's the first thing they know, and they don't have any theology about it. It's just, oh my God, he's come back from the dead, and then they work it out.
Quick response, and we'll go to our break.
No, Josephus, for example, definitely believes souls exist.
He's not an apocalyptic Jew.
Well, why not?
He's anti-apocalyptic. I don't know if you've studied Josephus. Josephus is famously anti-apocalyptic. We're talking about apocalyptic Jews.
Bart assumes that they just saw something, but he hasn't explained to us what they saw. And whatever they saw changed their complete worldview.
I don't know what you see when you see your grandmother either.
Okay, but I definitely don't say she's raised from the dead.
You say she's still alive.
Well, but she's still dead though, right?
In Jesus' case, my point is...
in our case, if you're going to use that parallel, in our case, when we see someone in the afterlife, yes, we think they're still alive in heaven, but we say they're dead here on earth.
We say their body is dead.
That's not what the early Christians said.
That's right.
They said Jesus had risen from the dead.
Right. So you need to listen. A
crucified man had risen from the dead.
Yes, you need to listen to why that is. We say their body is dead and their soul is alive because we believe in the difference between the body and the soul. Apocalyptic Jews did not. They could not say that his soul is still living because his body can't be alive unless his soul comes back into it. They don't have our view of the separation of body.
I disagree with
well, look, we're going to take a break there.
Really?
We're going to take a break.
Okay, tell me some.
When a few early followers said they saw Jesus after his death, that alone doesn't prove a resurrection. Psychological studies show that grief hallucinations are incredibly common. About 13% of bereaved people report vivid visions of deceased loved ones. These aren't random. They're often shaped by cultural expectations. And for apocalyptic Jews, the group Jesus and his followers belong to, resurrection didn't mean a ghost or a soul in heaven. It meant bodily revival. Their worldview didn't support the idea of a disembodied soul living on. So if someone thought they saw Jesus, they interpreted it as a physical resurrection. Not because it happened, but because they had no other framework for understanding that experience. This isn't speculation. Jewish texts like the Book of Daniel show their belief in a future bodily resurrection, not some eternal spirit world. And when Paul writes decades later, even he never describes seeing a physical Jesus, only a revelation or vision. That suggests the original resurrection claim likely started with grief-induced visions, not an empty tomb.
Just add, Bart says this is happening all the time. Where does someone project an enemy apparition? What example
it
do you
happens
have?
sometimes. If you feel guilty, for example, if you feel guilty about what you've done to somebody leading to...
Give me an example.
Well, if you read the psychological literature on visions, you actually find a good bit of it.
Anything specific?
Well, they aren't names that you would... They're just people. They're just people,
Pretty sure.
You
Not in the literature. Not in the literature. No.
Okay, well, I suggest you read it.
There is no projection of enemies in the literature. Dale Allison would
Yeah. So
correct you on that.
what I'd say is that some people have hypothesized that Paul felt very guilty, or that Peter felt very guilty about his denial of Jesus, and that he started out, and so because of his guilt, he saw something. It's very common. One of the most common reasons for seeing a bereaved loved one is because you felt like you mistreated them before they died, and the guilt creates and so.
But again, that doesn't guarantee saying an unparalleled claim of resurrection of a Messiah that was crucified. He could have felt like he forgave him, but it doesn't mean he would have said that.
And not only that, but I've never said it did. And so that isn't my claim.
You said that's what caused Peter's claim.
Peter did not...
He didn't claim Jesus rose from the dead?
Okay. What I've been saying is Peter did not claim that the Messiah got raised from the dead the second he saw Jesus. What he thought was Jesus had come back to life.
You're saying he figured it out as an apocalyptic Jew. I'm going with your argument, yeah. But Paul, how does Paul imagine
I was getting to that.
Crucified man
I was getting to that.
rising from the dead that he hates, that he thinks cursed by God, appearing to him? I'm looking forward to that one.
Okay, go ahead, Bart.
So Paul did not get this information from Peter and James. Paul was persecuting Christians before he ever met Peter and James. So he knows the Christian claims already. There have been a lot of psychological analyses about what might have happened to somebody who feels guilt over what they're doing to these people that would generate a vision and to have a conversion. As you probably know, there are instances in which people who are enemies of Christ have visions in which they get converted. And so Paul would be in that category.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, Sundar Singh, by the way, would be a great example of this. This was an Indian that became a great missionary. He was burning Bibles. He was persecuting Christians in the early 1900s, and ultimately he had a vision of Jesus, and he was transformed like Paul. But again, that happened after the Christian claim has already been made.
Yes, so did Paul.
Paul.
So did Paul.
Yeah.
That's my point. It's exactly the same. So you can't say that it doesn't happen to enemies.
So you think he understood...
Because you just gave the example of an enemy where it happened.
So you think he understood the Christian claim clearly as he was persecuted?
He understood that they were saying Jesus got raised from the dead, absolutely.
Okay. And then
why else is he persecuted?
And then he imagined on the Damascus Road...
I didn't say he imagined anything on the Damascus Road.
Well, what happened on the Damascus Road?
I just said that there are lots of options, and we don't know because he doesn't tell us.
Okay. Well, he said he saw the Lord Jesus. That's what he said.
He said he saw the Lord Jesus. But what did where did he see him? When did he see him? How did he see him? How close was him? Did they talk? Did they spend a week together?
Seeing him's good enough, right?
He thought he saw Jesus. I've been saying that all along. He thought he saw Jesus.
I'm not expecting.
I'm asking why you don't believe him. Why do you think Paul's wrong?
Why don't I think a person got raised from the dead?
Yes.
Oh.
Why don't you think Jesus got raised from the dead?
I don't think anybody gets raised from the dead. Okay. Because it violates the laws of nature.
Okay.
I mean,
so you have the kind of a materialist, fundamentalist view.
Well, let me ask this. You think God raised Jesus from the dead, right? Do you think God can break the laws of mathematics? Can God
can't contradict himself, no. Because he is...
Exactly.
Mathematics is his language.
That's right. The other language he uses is physics. Can he break the laws of physics?
I mean, I think we're getting off.
No, we are not getting off. This is precisely... You asked me why I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is because it violates the laws of physics. And I don't think
he can feed things into his system, for sure.
I don't think God can break the law of physics any more than he can break the law of mathematics.
Feeding things into his system to bring a dead person to life is not the same thing as making 2 + 2 5. That's completely different things.
They are both laws that have never been broken in history.
Except in the case of Jesus, right?
So here's the question. This is it's a very big question, because what you're arguing is that the most probable event that happens with Jesus, because Paul and Peter said it happened, the most probable thing is the violation of a law of physics that has never been violated in 13.8 billion years. Never. Except in this one instance. Now, if you're a historian, historians don't argue that something that happened only once in all of history is the most probable occurrence because somebody said it happened.
Unless there's an incredible evidence to
The incredible evidence is that Paul said
not just
so?
that. Not just that.
When someone says, Paul saw Jesus, and that proves the resurrection, they're missing a critical point. Paul himself never describes seeing a physical Jesus. He only reports a vision. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul lists Jesus appearing to people, including himself, but never says it was a body anyone could touch. And let's be clear, Paul wasn't a neutral witness. He already knew the resurrection claim. So his experience, whatever it was, came after the idea was already spreading. Visions like this are well documented. People under intense guilt, stress, or trauma often experience vivid hallucinations, especially during radical life shifts. A 2019 meta-study on religious visions showed that many so-called divine encounters happen in similar psychological states. Bart's point isn't just theory. It's supported by research in bereavement psychology, where guilt and grief often lead to mental projections of lost or even resented figures. The Christian apologist's example of Sundar Singh, someone who also had a vision and converted, doesn't help their case. It actually proves Bart's. Emotional trauma can produce powerful religious experiences that feel real, but aren't evidence of a supernatural event. And Bart nails it. If you're claiming the only time in history that the laws of physics were broken was in one unverified event 2,000 years ago based on a vision, you're not doing history. You're asking for blind faith. And historians don't work that way.
We're just getting started.
What's interesting here for me, Bart, though, is that presumably, on the face of it, if you do believe that God would never, if there is a God, let's say, that God would never break the laws of physics, then on the faces of it, no amount of evidence could persuade you of a miraculous claim. You've kind of decided that before you come to the text.
What you'd have to do is you'd have to have evidence from physicists that these laws don't apply.
Okay, so you'd have to go to the physicist rather than the historian.
You certainly could prove it, because physicists...
So we need to go to the physicist for the evidence.
Well, if you're going to say that the laws of physics have been broken one time in the history of the human race, then you need pretty good evidence. And the evidence that somebody said they saw somebody...
But that's not the only evidence, and we're going to talk about more. But that's not the only evidence. We were talking about the appearances, and the appearances, I think, and you've said this, and I've appreciated you said this in how Jesus became God. You talk about how basically the evidence is consistent with if Jesus did rise from the dead. And I appreciate that, because you're saying if Jesus rose from the dead, basically the evidence we have looks the same. It would look the same. So you don't believe he rose from the dead, but the evidence does support the miracle. Do you agree with that?
No, of course I don't.
Well, okay, consistent with the miracle.
Let me.
Is it consistent with the miracle?
Let me put it this way. there is a famous Jewish holy man, Baal Shem Tov, who eyewitnesses have told us, lived in the 18th century. He told us he could heal the sick, he could cast out demons, he could raise the dead. We have eyewitness accounts of this. And my suspicion is that you don't think it really happened, because you'd be suspicious of those reports.
I think the fact that nobody outside of Hasidic Jews think it happened is quite
okay. Who outside of Christians think that Jesus was raised from the dead?
Pinchas Lapid. He was a Jewish historian and scholar. He wrote a book called The Resurrection of Jesus. You should read it. It's actually really good. He actually was convinced by the evidence that Jesus rose from the dead.
Right. Okay.
You should read it. It's really good.
I guess the point is, if you come to believe that Jesus has been raised from the dead physically, it's quite likely you will become a Christian. So
if you believe in miracles of Baal Shem Tov, then you become a Hasidic Jew.
And I also point out
so that is an evidence that Baal Shem Tov really did these things, because somebody believes and then converts. It's not evidence.
And I would also add that there are scholars that I appreciate, people like E.P. Sanders. I know you respect E.P. Sanders. Like in Jesus and Judaism, the way he ends is basically saying, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But he admits the evidence is pretty strong. There's people that admit the evidence is strong, but they still don't go all the way.
I guess my question is...
I think the evidence, though, is strong. I don't think that's...
you haven't cited any... All you've cited so far are eyewitnesses. And you've agreed that eyewitnesses in other cases don't work for you, including Baal Shem Tov. And so I'd like to know, why do you choose some eyewitnesses over others?
Again, nobody... This goes back to Moroni. Nobody outside of those few people believed Moroni appeared to them. Nobody outside of certain Hasidic Jews believed that Baal Shem Tov did miracles.
How about Mormons?
How about Christians?
How about Mormons?
I just said nobody believes those miraculous claims happen outside.
Yes, well, nobody outside of the Christian faith thinks that Jesus is the Son of God who was raised from the dead.
No. But like Paul, for example, is an enemy that got convinced that Jesus rose from the dead. Who is the Paul for Baal Shem Tov? Tell me who he is.
Well, there are a lot of Hasidic Jews who didn't start out as Hasidic Jews who read these stories.
But who's a Paul? Who's someone who was persecuting the Hasidic Jews and then got convinced by the Baal Shem Tov miracles? You bring all these people up, but it's insane. I mean, Jesus is completely unparalleled, completely different than all these rest.
You are a Christian. You've always been a Christian. Of course you think that Jesus is the greatest thing ever. And so I understand
You've almost said that you think Jesus is the most compassionate, the most influential, amazing person. You've said things close to that.
No, I don't. But so you're in the Christian tradition and you want to show that you're right. And, so, okay.
I want to just demonstrate that Jesus is Lord because
doing this as a historian.
Died for our sins, and I want people to know that.
Exactly. You're a theologian, and that's fine. I have no qualms with you as a theologian. What I have qualms with is you claiming that you're doing this on disinterested historical grounds.
It's a historical religion. If it didn't happen in history, it didn't happen.
But if you're going to be a historian, you have to treat every religion equally, and not giving superiority to your particular faith.
But if you're going to be a historian, you need to be open-minded to miracles.
Yes, you're open-minded to everything.
No,
I am open-minded, yes. If you can show...
you said that the physics can't be...
I did say that.
Defied.
No. You didn't hear me.
Okay.
I said, you're saying it happened once in the entire human race. How many people have lived? I don't know how many people have lived on, billions of people. Mm-hmm. There are 8 billion people alive today. None of them is going to rise from the dead. How many people have risen from the dead? In your judgment, 1 out of, 20 billion who've lived or something. How many people have mistaken something they've seen? How many people have had a dream that they thought was something that was real? How many people have had a vision of a deceased loved one afterwards? Millions.
Right.
I mean, this is basically Hume's argument, isn't it? Against miracles. That essentially
so I'm different from Hume. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm saying that if you're...
So you're saying a historian can discover miracles in history then? You are saying that?
I wish you wouldn't put words in my lips.
Okay. Because I said you seem to be closed-minded.
Let me repeat it because I don't think you heard it. I'm saying that historians establish what probably happened on the past on the basis of probabilities. If the probability is 1 out of 800 billion or something versus 1 out of 8, what do historians think about that? Do they think it's more likely that the laws of physics are broken? Even they grant, laws of physics, suppose they grant that. Do they say it did happen in this one instance because we have these 3 people who said it happened? Or do they say maybe they missaw something?
Okay. Justin, and then we'll move on to your next bedrock fact.
We talked about, 107 billion people, that have walked the planet. That's fine. Out of those 107 billion people, how many of those people, those human beings, are worshipped by billions of people and called Lord and God today?
I don't know what the number is.
One.
So 107 billion. So how many? How many of those have been?
Let me finish my. Please let me finish my point. No. This is my turn. This is my turn.
Okay.
I'll
let you respond.
I thought you wanted me to respond to that.
Jesus is the only.
You
person.
asked me a question.
Okay.
You asked me a question. You wanted to know how many, and I was trying to answer your question. So may I answer?
Tell
your
me
question?
someone else other than Jesus that's worshipped by billions.
I'm answering by asking you.
Oh no! See, that's not. You weren't answering the question.
Okay, I will answer the question.
So let me at least finish my point.
107 billion. You can't say that more people worship Jesus now, therefore he was raised from the dead.
Okay.
Because let me finish.
Let me finish my point. I was making a point.
I'm answering your question.
You weren't answering
You asked me my question, and I'm answering it now. Let me finish my question,
and then you come back.
You say 107 billion, and since more people worship Jesus now, that's evidence.
No, that's not what I said.
Then I
so let me finish.
Okay.
So I'm saying what we have here is an extraordinary, by exactly these exact odds that you're talking about, we have an extraordinary anomaly. We have one human being who walked this earth from the last, billions of years, and however long humans have been on the earth. Out of 107 billion, this one human being is worshipped by billions and called Lord and God. I'm saying that is an extraordinary anomaly, and so I'm saying that's something that historians would go, wow, that kind of is amazing. If Jesus achieved that extraordinary anomaly, 1 out of 107 billion on that point, maybe he achieved another extraordinary anomaly. Maybe he rose from the dead.
Okay.
Are you really using that as a historical argument?
I'm using it as an argument for the resurrection, whatever you want to call it.
What kind of argument would you call it?
Well, what's your problem with the argument?
But isn't it an extraordinary anomaly that Jesus is worshipped by billions? How is a crucified man...
No, it's not an anomaly at all. I wrote an entire book explaining how it happened.
Okay, how does a crucified man in his mid-30s, how is he worshipped by billions of people today? I mean, you don't think that's not an extraordinary anomaly?
It's not an anomaly. It's amazing.
By definition, mathematics, 1 out of 107 billion. But I'll let you finish.
Why is that proof that he was raised from the dead? It's proof that people are convinced he was raised from the dead.
I said it's a good argument against this idea that you were making that, you're telling me only one person out of all the 107 billion rose from the dead? A historian can't say that. That's not good enough evidence. Well, here's another point on that same person that is an extraordinary anomaly.
You can't explain that one. You can explain why there are so many billions of Christians in the world. It's not hard to explain, without a miraculous explanation. So I don't understand why you're arguing this.
But this single individual has had this kind of impact.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So it's normal for crucified men in the ancient world that are Jews to be worshipped by billions and lay the foundations of Western civilization. This is normal.
You are not listening.
As Justin Bass grew frustrated and emotional, Bart Ehrman stayed grounded, calmly pointing out what actual historians rely on: evidence, not popularity or faith. Christianity's growth doesn't prove resurrection any more than Islam's global expansion proves Muhammad split the moon. Religious influence isn't rare. It's predictable. Sociologists and historians like Rodney Stark have shown that Christianity's rise was helped by social networks, Roman infrastructure, and centuries of political backing, not a miracle. In fact, mass belief in supernatural events happens across all major religions and cults, from Hindu milk-drinking statues to Marian apparitions. None of those are treated as historical facts, and neither should Jesus' resurrection. Bart also nailed the core problem. No credible historian would say a one-time violation of natural law is more probable than people being mistaken, especially when visions, hallucinations, and false memories are well documented in grief psychology. Studies show up to 60% of grieving people experience vivid visions of the deceased. That's not rare. What's rare is building a theology on it. So the real question is, do we rewrite physics for one ancient claim backed by a few biased followers? Or do we accept the far more likely explanation that stories evolved, beliefs spread, and people were wrong? What's more dangerous? Believing something because it feels good, or questioning it because it doesn't make sense? Let us know in the comments. Like if this gave you something to think about, and subscribe for more evidence-based breakdowns.